Many of us are loved, and far fewer of us are genuinely known. But today, we are going to get into the difference and what it actually takes to change that gap. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Cindy Darnell. I'm a sex and relationship therapist, working with all kinds of people in all kinds of relationship configurations all over the world. And on this channel, we have the conversations that many of us are having in our heads, but not out loud. Here, we talk about relationships, desire, intimacy, connection, friendships, emotions, grief, and everything that gets in the way. So if that's what you're here for, you're absolutely in the right place. Let's get started. So the first part I want to get started with is something that sounds pretty straightforward, but actually it's routinely and understandably misunderstood. And that is that you can know someone's entire life and still know almost nothing about who they are. So you can know their schedule, their history, their family, their preferences, how they take their coffee, what they're like when they're tired, the specific noise they make when something's annoying them, and you can even predict their reactions. You could finish their sentences, and in some cases, you've shared the same spaces with them, whether it's a home or a workplace or a friendship group or a regular Sunday catch-up. That is familiarity. And it's genuinely valuable. It's not nothing, but it's not the same as emotional intimacy. And the gap between them is where a lot of quiet dissatisfaction lives. And that's because familiarity is built on the surface of a person, their habits, their patterns, the logistics of their lives. But intimacy is something else. It's access to their inner world, to their fears, often the things that they haven't named out loud, the questions that they've been sitting with, sometimes for years, or the parts of themselves they are not sure would be accepted if they were ever seen. And every person is carrying that kind of interior life, and most of the people around them, partners, friends, and family, never make it there. Not because they don't care, but because no one even thought to knock. Physical closeness and social proximity create the conditions for intimacy, but they don't create the intimacy itself. You see, two people can share every inch of a life together for 15 years of friendship, but still be operating almost entirely on the surface of each other. The relationship can look close and feel comfortable and function perfectly well, yet still be missing the thing that actually makes it feel like home. So now let's look at what actually builds depth in a relationship. And if it's not time and it's not familiarity, we got to talk about what it actually is. So emotional intimacy is built through the quality of what gets exchanged between people and not the quantity of years that you log together. And this is a skill, which means that it can be learned and practiced and brought into any relationship worth having. Two or more people can spend a decade side by side exchanging nothing deeper than logistics. What's for dinner? Did you see what so-and-so did? How was the commute? This happens in romantic partnerships, and it also happens in friendships that technically have been going for years, but where both people would struggle to name what the other person is actually wrestling with in their internal world right now. It's comfortable, it's familiar, and it's missing something really real. Not out of laziness or indifference, but because shallow is easier and nobody ever really wants to push past it. Depth gets built in the moments where someone says something they're not sure they're supposed to say, where they name a fear instead of smoothing it over, where they let the conversation go somewhere uncomfortable and stay there, rather than steering it back towards easier ground. And that takes something. It takes the willingness to say something true that feels risky to say, and the trust that the other person will meet it rather than move away from it. And this is where the familiarity question becomes pointed, because you can know someone's external life in extraordinary detail and have almost no experience of being real with them or receiving them when they are real with you. And the knowing that familiarity offers and the knowing that intimacy offers are really very different things. One is about the shape of someone's life, and the other is about who they actually are inside of that life. Now, let's think about how most of us actually communicate with the people that we are close to. Partners, friends, family, the people that we see regularly. How are you? How was your day? How are the kids? How is work? These aren't questions about someone's inner world. They're just not. They're social rituals, and we ask them out of habit, and we answer them out of habit. Good, busy, tired. The expected answer to "how are you" is a non-answer, and everyone involved knows that. So we're in the middle of what a lot of people are calling a loneliness epidemic. And I think part of what's driving it isn't a shortage of people in our lives. Most of us aren't entirely isolated. It's a shortage, though, of real contact, because we're surrounded by familiarity, but we're starving for depth. We have plenty of people to be around, but far fewer that we can actually be real with. And real intimacy starts with questions that actually invite someone in. And this matters in a long friendship as much as it does in a marriage or any other kind of relationship. What's something that you've been sitting with this week that you haven't said out loud? Or is there anything you've wanted to say to me that you haven't quite found the moment for? Or just, it's been really hard lately. The real version, not the edited one. These questions change the temperature of a conversation. And for a lot of us, when someone actually asks us something like that, we're caught off guard because it happens so rarely. For a lot of us, we've been carrying things sometimes for a really long time, waiting for the right question, waiting for someone who actually wants to know. And the person who's willing to ask the real question, whether that's a partner, a friend, or a sibling, tends to become someone people never forget. Not because of anything dramatic, but because the experience of being genuinely asked about your inner life and having someone stay for the answer is so much rarer than it should be, right? Which brings us to the part that stalls most people. Emotional intimacy requires risk, and specifically, it requires someone willing to take the risk of going first. And this plays out in romantic relationships, and it plays out just as much in friendships. I've spoken with people who have close friends, people that they have known for 20 years, where both of them are aware that the friendship has stayed at a certain level, and both of them privately wish it went deeper, and neither of them has moved towards it. The same unspoken standoff. If they open up, I will. If they go deeper, I'll follow. And this standoff can hold for a really long time, for years. And in some relationships, it holds indefinitely. Someone has to share something uncertain, something uncomfortable, something they're not sure will land well, and trust that the other person will step towards it rather than step back. Now, this is a real risk, and it doesn't always pay off. Sometimes it lands awkwardly, or sometimes it gets minimized or goes quietly nowhere. But without someone willing to make the first move, guess what? Nothing moves. The depth that both people might genuinely want stays permanently just out of reach. Not because it's unavailable, but because neither person was willing to be the one who reached. So, what happens when someone does take that risk and it doesn't go well? When you open up and the response you get is distance or critique or visible discomfort, something shifts, usually quietly, and a small recalibration happens, often below the level of conscious thought. Well, I won't do that again. And this happens in friendships just as much as it happens in partnerships. Someone shares something real, a fear, a struggle, something they've been ashamed of, and the response they get is deflection or a joke or a pivot back to safer territory. And it doesn't have to be cruel. It doesn't even have to be intentional. But it lands as a signal that this isn't a place where that kind of thing is welcome. And so when that pattern repeats, when vulnerability is consistently met with withdrawal, or with being told that you're too much, or with a redirect towards something easier, people don't just stop sharing new things. They slowly start pulling back the things they've already shared. And that wall doesn't go up all at once. It builds one small retreat at a time. And that's how intimacy actually dies. In relationships, in friendships, in families. Not in a single rupture, but in a long series of quiet exits, 1,000 paper cuts. And sadly, the person isn't being intentionally cruel. They're adjusting to evidence. They've learned through repeated experience that this simply isn't a safe place to land. And so they protect themselves accordingly, which is why emotional safety isn't just a feature of a good relationship. It's structural. It's what determines whether the intimacy that's possible between two people actually ever gets built, regardless of the form that the relationship takes. Now, this next point might surprise you, and I think it's worth saying really plainly. You can love someone genuinely, deeply, and without question, and still not be emotionally intimate with them. And you can care deeply about a friend and feel real warmth and loyalty towards them, and still be keeping the most essential parts of yourself completely out of sight. Love and care are feelings, but intimacy is a practice. And they are related, but one doesn't automatically produce the other. And they don't always travel together. I've sat with people who love their partner completely and who simultaneously keep their real self almost entirely hidden from them. And I've spoken with people who describe friendships they would actually call their closest, people they would do anything for, where neither person actually knows what the other is genuinely struggling with. The affection is real, and the depth is missing. And usually nobody has named it. It's hidden out of fear, out of habit, or out of a belief so buried that it's never been examined. That if the people in their lives truly saw them, all of them, that the love or the friendship would end. So they offer a version of themselves instead, a manageable version, one that's easier to love or easier to be around, and less likely to create friction or discomfort. And the people around them who also genuinely care love that version. And so here's what's heartbreaking about that. They may never find out whether their real self would have also been loved too. Many people spend years, whole relationships, whole friendships, being cared for through a version of themselves that they constructed, and the real question never gets answered. That's the cost of the gap between familiarity and intimacy. It's not just the surface level connection. It's the possibility of actually being known. And that brings me to what I think people are actually really hungry for, the thing that sits underneath all of it. Most people reach for the word understood, and that's real. Being understood can happen quickly in a single conversation with a good therapist, sometimes with a stranger on a long flight who you'll never see again. Understanding is insight. It doesn't require history. But being known, that's different. That requires witnessing over time. It requires someone, a partner, a friend, a person who's been genuinely present across different chapters of your life, who has been there through the contradictions, who has seen you on your worst days and your most confused ones, who has watched you fail at things that you care about, who knows the parts of you that don't fit neatly together, and who is still there. Still, because they've seen all of it and they're still choosing you anyway. That's what most people are actually aching for. Not someone who gets them, although that's nice, but someone who has seen all of them and stayed. That hunger doesn't only live in romantic relationships, it lives in us as social creatures. We need to be known by more than one person. And a partner can't carry that entire weight, and expecting them to do so is one of the reasons so many partnerships buckle, whether they're monogamous or non-monogamous. Friendships, real ones, serve something essential in our lives, and they require the same willingness to be real, to go first, to stay when things get uncomfortable. And the antidote to this kind of disconnection that so many people are feeling right now isn't more contact, but it is deeper contact. It's bringing the practice of intimacy, the questions, the risks, the willingness to be seen into more of the relationships that matter to us. And that doesn't arrive through time alone or through sharing a life in the logistical sense, but it arrives through the accumulation of moments where two or more people are willing to be real with each other, where someone went first, where someone was met, and something between them has shifted and held. And that's where emotional intimacy really is, at its most fundamental core. It's a skill, it's a practice, and it's available in any relationship where all the people involved are willing to show up for it. It's harder to build than most people expect, and it's more fragile than it looks, and more worth staying for than almost anything else that I can think of. If you're still here, thanks for hanging out with me. I really love talking about this stuff, and I love supporting people on their relational journeys, whether they are journeys into relationships with themselves, with their friends, with their lovers, with their partners, with the wider world around them, especially during these really hard, topsy-turvy, socially unpredictable times. The ability to build community, to show up for each other, and to give a shit, I think is fundamental. And so many of us lack the capacity, but also lack the awareness that it's even something that we're hungry for. Because as I was saying, we fill our lives up with so much stuff, fluff, and underneath it all, we're still so hungry. So I like being able to offer some insight into what you might be hungry for. If you'd like to go further with this, head on over to my website, cindydarnell.com. I have my book there, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, The Truth About Mismatched Libido and Rediscovering Desire. Also, I have some online courses there for all kinds of people learning to lean into the deeper aspects of intimacy in adult and less than adult ways. I also offer consultations via Zoom for individuals, couples, and polycules all over the world. All of that is linked below. And if you like these videos, please like and subscribe and share these videos. This is how we tell the algorithm that this content is worth watching. And I've only really started here in the last couple of months on YouTube, so I appreciate those of you who've joined me so far. And let me know in the comments what resonates with you about what we're talking about today. How can you imagine trying some of these things yourselves at home? And also, let me know what you'd like me to make more videos about. Hearing your feedback is really helpful for me and really reassuring. If you've stayed to the end, thanks for being here. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye for now.